Jonte Cook has been arrested. We need to talk about what that means for the top available wide receiver in the transfer portal. What's up, kinfolk? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. If this is your first time watching the #1 college football show, thank you for joining us. We talk college football 24/7, 365 around here. If you like what you're watching, join the 130,000 folks that subscribe to the show and answer the question. Do you think you'll see Johntay Cook playing college football in 2025? I think it's a question that we get to we get to ask now, not answer now. But it's been something like a really torrid 6 months for Cook, going from what I thought was perhaps the best wide receiver at Texas that had not had an opportunity to shine yet. I thought he was going to be up there with Ryan Wingo as two dudes that you just knew Quinn Ewers and later Arch Manning would be able to count on as Texas tries to win its first national championship since 2005 and gets closer and closer. When he left the program, it was made very clear to me that there was a problem inside the locker room that precipitated to him entering the transfer portal. At the time, I don't think many of us think that there's a whole lot else to it, except that it's just not been a great fit. That said, Jonte Cook and Arch Manning felt like there was going to be a really good and cool dynamic duo. Turns out, Arch Manning is doing just fine with guys like DeAndre Moore, right? And we know what they have going on in 2025. Notably, they get C.J. Baxter back in the backfield along with Christian Clark. You know what you have in Jared Gibson. You know what you have in Quintravion Wisener. You're going to get better. You're going to continue to build. So Cook goes into the portal, and at the time, it's an open question as to where he was going to go. I mean, we're talking about a guy that was being pursued by Georgia, was being pursued by Alabama, was being pursued by a couple of Big Ten schools. I thought that perhaps he might end up at Oregon at one point, and I was nearly correct, as what had happened was he ends up at Washington and had enrolled to go to school there. Only then did we find out, it ain't going to fit between him and Jedd Fisch, which is fascinating. And for no other reason than Jedd Fisch, this time last year, around January 14th-ish, 2024, had told everybody in Arizona he was staying put and ends up going to Washington, and he's still the head coach at Washington. I thought adding a guy like Jonte Cook to that wide receiver core was going to make him really important to what they were doing in 2025, as he's their top wide receiver, and I think the only one they had signed out of the transfer portal this season. And then, we get to this place in February, Super Bowl week, where we find out that Cook has been arrested on misdemeanor charges. Now, don't know the extent of the arrest, don't know the extent of what he is facing, but we do know that college football programs tend not to be very kind when it comes to pending arrest or things that are approaching violent behavior, right? I think we'll have to wait and see, because depending on how serious this is or isn't, it could mean that Jonte Cook is playing football as soon as the spring transfer portal window opens up in April of this year. It also could mean we don't see Jonte Cook for some time. And I see a lot of stories like this go either way. Like Kyron Lacey's in the middle of one right now, which is torrid and awful. And I feel for him, because the more I read about it, the more it was, well, I don't need to give you my opinion about what I think of a criminal investigation. We just need to know that Kyron Lacey was the best wide receiver that Garrett Nussmeier had last year. And now they've added a whole bunch of guys to LSU, including dudes like Berrien Browning, that I think can absolutely help them and make LSU a contender for the SEC championship. Kyron Lacey being perhaps sidelined for 2025, at least through the spring, would make some sense to me. Jonte Cook being able to help a program like that, maybe, right? But I have also seen this go really bad. I mean, a few years ago at Oklahoma, Seth McGowan and Trajan Bridges, a couple of guys that I really enjoyed, got to know, got themselves in horrible trouble, right? End up going to boot camp and needing to work their way back out. One guy ends up at Central Arkansas, another one ends up at New Mexico State, and right now it feels like they're on a very good track for redemption. And as far as what this means for the sport, like, I'm always interested in how coaches tend to talk about these players when they're on the roster. Like Ollie Gordon, who got pulled over for DUI in July. And Mike Gundy was going, look, I'm not going to sit him. He's going to face whatever criminal charges come his way, but he's playing football as long as he's eligible to play football. All right. We've gone some time since we've had a coach go out of his way to say something like that, I think. But there's good ways of looking at this too. Like Nick Saban used to be that guy. He would say, hey, look, I'm not going to kick somebody out of the program just because you think I should. Like if I kick that kid out, where's he going to go? What structure does he have? And how can we help him, if at all we get to help him? And that was one of the things I always enjoyed and loved about Saban is he loves his players. He always loved his players. And his players knew that he loved them too. It's his natural antagonistic nature behind a lectern with a bottle of Coke up there that kind of gave us this impression that he don't really like most people. And that's not true. He likes a whole lot of people. It's just when you are up there, he's in an adversarial mode. The rat poison quote, it comes to mind, right? That's the one that everybody assigns to him, but he loved his players. What I am really hurting for is I don't know that Jonte Cook is getting that, right? Because you're not part of anybody's program right now. You're on your own. And that is when you really need a football team, when you really need, as people like to say, their brothers to come get them and check on them. But you also have these apparatus that is a campus, that is an environment where you go to class, that is coaches you can talk with that have all sorts of ways to get you the services that you need to help you or to get you back on track, to get you something like some rehab going. Like I always thought it was funny that we would call Nick Saban's his coaching staff, the rehabilitation clinic, because he would take what was a misfit coach and he would bring him in and out pumps an SEC head coach. Did it with Steve Sarkisian, did it with Lane Kiffin, on down the line it goes. Like he's that guy. Come be an analyst with me. We'll figure out how I do this, and then I'll send you back out there. I want that to happen for Jonte Cook. I want that to happen for Kyren Lacy. I want good things for all of the players. And this being a really interesting time when people are much more likely to say we're in a business relationship and not a personal relationship does kind of get under my skin, because I feel like I got coaches that sometimes are talking out of both sides of their mouths, right? On the one hand, I don't want to recruit. I don't want to pay kids. On the other hand, I do want to create a lasting bond with this person that I'm asking to go get themselves into an oncoming car collision more often than not on behalf of the team. I'm asking them to do that, knowing all the risks that are involved. I like to think that there are coaches, though, that have reached out to him and other adults and even, teammates that have tried to find out what's going on and or do whatever they can to comfort him. Same thing with Kyren Lacy, and we can keep talking about all the players that are affected. Sometimes it's as simple as you don't want someone left out in the cold that you could help. But when I'm talking about a guy like Johntay Cook, I'm talking about could be a star player. Like I think about Eric Gilbert and how he started out, right, at Arkansas, Georgia, and then LSU, and then Nebraska, and how that ended. I'm going, damn, dog. That was one of the most talented wide receivers, tight ends, playing wide receiver, that we had seen in recent memory, and it's just gone. Before it gets to that place, I like us to be able to do a little bit better taking care of each other. I also recognize that you only got so much, you can only give so much, you can only give so many opportunities, and there's two different ways of looking at this. But whatever Jonte Cook is going through, whatever Kyren Lacy is going through, my sincere hope is that they come out the other side on this and that they find a way to get back to doing this thing that they're really the best in the world at. And you get to say that when you play big-time college football and you start at wide receiver, you were one of the best in the world at this. And to be so young and to have so much out in front of you, all of it to come to the screeching halt and maybe come crashing down on your head, I don't want that for anybody. I don't want anybody to feel as if they are left out of this thing, man. And making mistakes is making mistakes. Atoning for your mistakes is also part of it. It's going to hurt, and you're going to say, I'm sorry, until people no longer want to hear you say it. And even then, you might still have some more to say. So we'll see. But I wanted to talk a little bit about Jonte Cook. I want to talk a little bit about what college football is doing in and around it and how it is affecting us all. So if you got something that you think is constructive to add, I'd love to see it in the comments below.